Welcome to the Surrendering Like Sarah podcast. We're your hosts, Megan Bear
and Brooke Avon. Surrendering to God's calling for life can be hard to do, especially as the wife of a medical student, resident, fellow, or attending.
Sarah's example of surrender in Genesis 12 shows how fruitful our lives can be when we choose to let go and obey God's call.
Join us as we interview women in medical marriages striving to surrender like Sarah. We are so glad you're here.
We are back for season 2 of the Surrendering Like Sarah podcast. And since close to a year has passed since our last season ended, we wanted to share life updates with you from Brooke and I, as well as update you on all of the new and exciting things that are going on with our podcast. So Brooke, I'm going to have you start. Could you give us your life update?
Yes, I feel like I left everyone at a really big cliffhanger from last season in my interview. So quick update. Jared matched in psychiatry here at Penn State, and we are so thrilled and thankful. That is something that we had prayed really hard about, that we would just be servants to wherever the Lord wanted us to go. And we were super affirmed right when he matched that this is where the Lord wanted us, and we are so thankful for that. So we matched on Friday, and housing came on the market, and we were accepted with our offer on that following Sunday. And then in 2 more days, we actually found out that we were pregnant, which is all the things that we were praying for all at once. It was a beautiful, crazy couple days that I remember Jared and I just looking at each other saying, we have nothing else to pray for right now. We are just living in answered prayer. And so we actually had our son at the end of November, and his name is Oliver, and we are so thankful for that.
It brings tears to my eyes still when you bring that up. It's just so wild. The timing, like you had said in your interview, we have surrendered these things. We've surrendered God's timing, and we've surrendered match. We've surrendered what this looks like for a home even, and the Lord's hand of provision and also his love. That was so evident, and that was really neat to watch firsthand. So I guess our family update is just that we have some new rhythms this year, as our oldest has started preschool at a school. So I'm not homeschooling her this year. My husband is in year 3 of 5 of urology residency. And so it's wild to think that he just passed the halfway point January 1st for residency training. And this season, we're enjoying watching our girls' friendships grow. Now that they're a bit older, they can play together, and you can often find them building barns for their toy animals, mostly horses, out of Duplos and Magnetiles. And our family is also expecting our 3rd daughter in May, which we're really excited about. And this leads us to sharing some new things about Surrendering Like Sarah. So we have some pretty big updates we want to keep you guys up to date on.
Yes. So for Surrendering Like Sarah, we are hoping to release 6 podcasts for you this season 2. And these will be released every 2 weeks, just like season 1 was.
Another big update is that we're thrilled to share that we've partnered with a ministry called Side by Side. Side by Side is a ministry for wives of medical and dental doctors with chapters in over 90 communities worldwide. Their goal is to help wives grow strong in their faiths, marriages, and relationships with one another. You can learn more about this amazing ministry by visiting their website at sidebysidecmda.org. You can also look for chapters near you, or learn more about starting a chapter where you live if there's not currently one, under the Get Connected and Find a Chapter tab. You'll notice that each person we interview throughout this season of the podcast has some connection to Side by Side. So you'll learn more about the ministry as you listen to the episodes this season. And we're so excited to share this ministry with you and to encourage you to join your local chapter as a way to grow your own faith. Another big announcement is that we've decided to make and sell stickers to help support the cost of keeping our podcast content available each month. We pay a host website in order to have unlimited podcast content available to you all year long. But since this is a monthly fee, we've decided to sell stickers to help offset that cost. There are 3 styles of stickers currently available. You can find pictures of them on our social media, and you may have seen them posted already. Brooke has worked really hard to design each one. I have drawn the florals for 2 of them, and Nicole has printed them herself. You can order stickers and support the SLS ministry by clicking on the link for the sticker order form found in today's show notes. You can also find the link for this order form in our link tree on our social media bios. All profit made from these sticker sales will go directly towards supporting the podcast. Another way you could look to support us is directly through Buzzsprout, which is the hosting website that we use. There is a link in our show notes as well if you'd like to pledge a monthly amount in order to support our podcast.
And another really amazing announcement that we have is that we've actually added a new team member, Nicole Hull, who will be joining us today and will be a part of some of our episodes this season. We're really super grateful for you to join us today and to share more about your story.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here, to be a part of this ministry and help it grow. So thanks for having me today to share my story.
Yes, of course. So I've actually got to know Nicole basically since she moved here. And so Nicole is the wife to Ben, who is a first-year anesthesia resident at Penn State Hershey Medical Center. They have a mini Bernedoodle who is named Millie, who Ellie loves to pieces, and have lived in the Hershey area for almost 5 years now. Nicole has taught 3rd grade for 3 years before transitioning to substitute teaching. She loves to craft, and you can often find her knitting, sewing, or creating something on her Cricut.
Yes, which she is using to help make some of the stickers that we're selling from our shop. And we are just so grateful for Nicole and all that she is bringing to our Surrendering Like Sarah team. So, Nicole, will you start us off by telling us how you and Ben met and when medicine became a part of both of your lives?
Yeah. So Ben and I met actually freshman year of college, but we did not start dating until we were juniors. So my freshman hall put on an event called Guy Rad, which stands for Get Your Roommate a Date. And he was actually supposed to go with someone else on my hall. And it's kind of like, it's like early on in college, you're not like really dating in these events, you're like getting to know people. And a couple of my friends and I had gotten dates for some of our other hallmates, and I was just going to go. It was a scavenger hunt in downtown Disney, and I was like, yep, I'm going to that. Doesn't matter if I'm going with a boy or not. So Ben was supposed to go with someone else, and then something happened. I don't even know, honestly, what happened, but he ended up going with me. So that's how we met. We were just kind of after that, like acquaintances. We had a lot of mutual friends, and we were just kind of like sort of in the same circles for a couple of years there. And then junior year, he was there early because he had been there all summer for research things. And I was there early for RA things. And honestly, I don't know what happened, but it happened. And then we started dating.
I love
In terms of like when medicine became part of our lives, I always knew that Ben wanted to go to med school. So when I met him, I knew he was pre-med. And then when we dated, we were like a lot farther along in college. So he had been a lot more serious about it at that point. So yeah, I can't say that I knew exactly what all of that entailed. I knew like med school, that's a thing. I honestly don't know if I knew residency was a thing because of Grey's Anatomy, sure. But other than that, I don't think I really had a full picture of really what a life in medicine was.
I think that's pretty normal. I feel like most of us don't really know what it's going to be like, right? Until we jump into it, even if we're told. And I feel like that could be said about a lot of seasons of life, but especially the niche of medicine. Somebody can tell you it's hard, but it will be certain types of hard for you and your partner, different possibly than what that person says. So I can relate to that for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I can too. So both of you guys were in graduate school at the same time. Ben started medical school in Pennsylvania while you were completing your graduate degree in California. What were some of the joys and challenges living across the country from one another during the year before you got married?
So that was a wild year. That was 2020 for us. So we
Whoa.
got engaged March 17th, 2020, which was like right after the pandemic really took off. Then that July, we moved him to Pennsylvania, which also was crazy because I am from California. Never did I think I was going to live in Pennsylvania or be here this long, to be completely honest. So I was completing my master's and teaching credential, and then he was here. So there were a lot of challenges with that. COVID was a big one, honestly. Like just being able for him to even like come visit or me to go visit was really difficult. We felt really apprehensive about that. And what are people going to think if we get on a plane and then we're around people? Just all of those things in that early times of COVID. And I was really struggling my last semester of grad school. I was student teaching fully online because it was COVID. I, at that time, had moved into an apartment for that last semester with some girls who were great, but we just weren't best friends. And so I spent a lot of time by myself, a lot of time in my room on my computer teaching or writing papers. And that was really hard. And then Ben was here in Pennsylvania and he was struggling through first year medical school. Ben is a super social person. He does not like to be alone. And about a month or two into his first year of medical school, his roommate moved out and they did not
Wow.
ever give him a new one. So he was struggling being alone. And, early pandemic, the med school was online, like a lot of things were online. So he was struggling with that. I was struggling with that and like trying to support each other from across the country. But some of the joys, we were in the middle of that. We were like starting to plan our wedding, which was super exciting. And also, like, we did have a sort of shared experience of that struggle of me being kind of alone and him being kind of alone and struggling through school at that time. So, yeah, it was hard, but I think it was good for us to know like we could do it. He had studied abroad when we were in college. He went to Uganda and he was gone for 5 months. So it kind of was like, this is going to be hard, but we've kind of done it before and it's been worse.
Mm.
The time change, and we were both in college at that time. And that was a hard time in our relationship in general. We knew we were going to get through it and we did.
That's really neat to hear how the Lord prepared you for that season too, having had that time in college when Ben was in Uganda. I feel really similarly that happened to Blake and I both. We both were in different countries for a couple of months at a time during those college years. And I, to this day, will still say that the Lord used that to prepare my own heart for what medicine looks like because of the demands of your partner being gone and the independence that you have to learn to build life and to build a fruitfulness apart from them, because life is fruitful with others, but it can't always be with them, with your spouse. So that's really neat how the Lord prepared you guys, even just for that first year while you're waiting to get married and you're engaged. And then that even setting you up then for medicine afterwards. I guess more specifically, were there any other ways you felt like the Lord used that year to help strengthen or prepare you guys for marriage?
Yes. A big one was that marriage, you like come together and we both felt like we still feel very strongly about it, how in the Bible it says like you leave your father and mother and you become one. We feel strongly about putting our family unit first, which is hard. Being far away, you want to go and leave, but this is my first and foremost family unit. But I think at that time it helped us learn that we could be on our own and we could support each other. And it also helped us learn how we really needed to be supported and what should our conversations look like during that time, because it is a time difference. It's only 3 hours, but there's a time difference. So Ben would be going to bed and I would be like, it's only 8 p.m. Let's talk on the phone, and couldn't do that. So it helped us learn little ways to support each other, and we didn't have to be right next to each other to do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's super beautiful. So walk us through your timeline after that. So after you got engaged and were apart, you got married and came here. How did life look here once you got married?
Yeah, so we moved here. Ben had already done his first year of med school, so it was that summer. I was looking for a job, which was really tough. I had kind of missed the hiring window in Pennsylvania, and so that was just a really hard and like stressful season to feel like I was going to be like the breadwinner and I didn't have a job. But the Lord provided something for me that was really, really stretching, but I learned a lot and was a lot more confident in my like teaching abilities after that, even though it was only like a couple months. So during that first job that I had here, it was a long-term sub position, which I was so grateful to have, but I was ultimately looking for a more permanent contract. So in that time, I was interviewing and I was offered a job teaching third grade. So I ended up leaving the long-term sub early and I started teaching third grade in October of 2022. And then I was at that job teaching third grade up until the end of this last school year.
So, a place to be a little more stable and consistent in developing your career, it sounds like, after that first long term sub position. So, you said up until this past spring of 2024, what made you decide then not to stay full time with that same position? And what have you kind of been up to since?
Yeah. Well, there were a lot of reasons why I wanted to leave, but a really big one is that we have been trying to have a baby for about 2 years now. And we had been doing fertility treatments, various fertility treatments, starting in February of 2023. We'd started really low tech and then progressively got more, I don't know, techie. I don't know what the word is for fertility treatments. And near the end of the school year, we had, gone through match and I just felt like it was a good time. I knew that we were going to have a lot more doctor's appointments coming up. We just felt as a family that it would be a good time to take a break from teaching and be able to focus on trying to build our family.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And emotionally for you, I mean, teaching is an incredibly difficult job, and the emotional energy you're pouring out for that, on top of just the emotions behind trying to have a baby and the treatments that you're going through, makes so much sense. I'm going to rewind just a little bit because you mentioned match as well, and we didn't get to talk about that. And then we're going to come
Sure.
back to I have questions about trying for a baby. But I know when you guys matched this past spring, you were trying to get back to
Yes.
California
Yes.
to family. And we are so grateful that you guys are here. But tell us about your emotions and what that was like for you to process, because I know that was not what you had hoped for.
Yeah, match was a really stressful season. I think it's stressful for everyone, no matter where you're trying to go, what you're matching into. I think it's just a crazy season of a lot of uncertainty. So, I am originally from California. My husband, Ben, is from Colorado. And so our families are there. We knew we wanted to start a family. We've been actively trying that. And so we really wanted to be closer to family for this next season of life. So, when Ben made his rank list, we ranked, I believe it was 4 California programs, and then we ranked Penn State, and then we had a couple other programs after that. We really felt like we would not go past Penn State on our list. So we just really felt like if it's not going to be California, we would really rather just stay here in our house that we have here with our friends that are hopefully here. And so we felt like pretty confident that we weren't going to match in those places after where we had placed Penn State. We also felt, to be completely honest, we felt really confident that we were going to match in California. And so
Mm.
that day was really stressful, really nerve wracking. We had a lot of family in town, which was really great for Ben and to celebrate him and this like huge accomplishment. But it also put a lot of pressure on us. I had family members tell me that I was not allowed to cry if we did not match where I wanted to because this was all about Ben. And they
Mm.
meant incredibly well. They did not mean, anything by that.
Mhm.
But that honestly just made me more stressed out because I was like, I'm probably gonna cry either way, honestly. Like I think even if we opened the envelope and it said California, I think I would have cried. So
Right.
so the match ceremony was, I don't know, kind of like a blur, honestly. I have no idea what happened. But we had a really good friend who had matched ophthalmology, so they match early like urology does. So he already knew that he was going to be here at Penn State and he came to match and he was sitting next to us and right before like all the envelopes, he asked if we wanted to pray together. And that was
Oh.
just like the sweetest moment. I was like on the verge of tears already and that was just, like, so
Mhm.
kind and sweet, and then, when we opened the envelope and it said Penn State Hershey, it was I can't even describe it. I mean, Ben just looked at me and said, "Well, I guess we're here the next 4 years," and I just started crying.
Mm.
which was stressful because then I was like, I'm not allowed to cry. But it was very bittersweet because I knew we had really, really wonderful friends that we had made here in our time of med school that were staying, like that friend that had offered to pray with us. And so that felt a little bit like, okay, God like kept someone in here for us. Like all of our friends are not
Mm.
going to move away. And then within 5 minutes, we found out that Brooke and Jared were staying, which was exciting. And
Yay.
also we had all the emotions with that.
Yeah.
And then we found out that another friend of ours was staying. And it really just felt like God had totally taken care of us. We knew we were
Mm.
obviously disappointed. I came home and just cried for like 20 minutes upstairs away from our family. But really at the end of it, after all the tears, when we could really sit and like look at it more clearly, God knew what he was doing, obviously, but then he kept all these wonderful friends around us who didn't necessarily want to stay either. A lot of us wanted to go home and be closer to family, but God kept us here together. And so that has been really sweet as residency has gone on to be able to still get together with those people and walk through life with them. And even better that we're all here for exactly 4 years. All the residencies that the guys matched into were exactly 4 years. So God was like, you're all going to leave at the same time. You're here for the
Wow.
same amount of time. Like, I'm not leaving you here with no one. And that was just like a really sweet reminder that he is always there for us.
I remember that moment so clearly and just hugging you on match day and just so many emotions. Penn State does like a huge match ceremony where you all have to open the letter at the same time in the room at the same time. And there's family members there. And it's just a lot of emotion.
Yes.
Whether you get your first choice or your last choice or anything in between, it is stressful and a lot of emotion. And so I remember looking at you and you're like, we're here. I'm like, so are we. And we just hugged and hugged and hugged. And we're
Oh.
so like thankful for you guys to be here with us as well. And what sweet friendships that have developed so much in
Yeah.
med school. I don't think we've actually even talked about that much, but our husbands have found this incredible group of people that all went through med school at the same time together. I don't know, there's probably like 20 of them
Yeah.
all together that are Christians, and it was an incredible community. And so it was hard to have our friends leave. There was
Yeah.
quite a few of them that left, and then there was quite a few that stayed. So we were thankful that we weren't alone for sure. And then that season was really hard. Like we had to say goodbye to a lot of friends. I remember it so clearly.
And for God to keep 7 of us here
Yes.
out of that 20 was just not even at all what I would have thought was going to happen.
Oh, same. Yeah.
It's wild too to think back to like the beginning of your story was you and Ben were separated. You were isolated during COVID, and a lot of what you connected in that year before you got married was living a very isolated life, not having a lot of community, not even having each other in person to really rely on. And then the Lord ends your medical school season in person at this big celebration with a lot of community that you've established in person. And then on top of that these people are staying with you, I can totally understand the emotion of that. It's like, of course, you're sad that you're not going to be with family, but then rejoicing also in knowing that these next 4 years are lived out with this community that's become family in many ways for both of you. It's so sweet how the Lord works in such intentional ways like that. That's probably something you guys were praying over when you were in your like engaged year. And then the Lord has provided that in this new season. And now that you're living in residency and you've experienced that, like you're saying, being able to still connect with those 7 families on top of many others that I know that you guys have built community with is such a blessing. That's really, really powerful. Thank you for sharing that part of your story with us.
Yeah, of course.
I'm going to go back to trying for a baby and fertility, and we can kind of trace that storyline and that timeline. But will you start by telling us how you decided to get involved with seeing a fertility specialist and kind of give us a more timeline associated just to that portion of your story?
Yeah. So we started trying, like I said, in February of 2023. From February to October, we were just trying on our own, as you do. Around that October, or maybe the month or so before, I was talking to a friend of mine, Jackie Nave, friend of the podcast. I was talking about how I wasn't really sure that I was ovulating. Like I was doing the ovulation strips at home, but I wasn't really getting a positive. Is that real? I don't know. Just kind of going through that as first time trying really, and how my cycles really aren't regular. And she was like, if your cycles aren't regular and if you don't think you're ovulating, you don't have to wait a whole year of trying. You can just go and see a fertility specialist. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. I did not know that. That's great. So that was just honestly like such a huge blessing for her to speak that into our lives and for God to have brought her into my life at that time. Because honestly, when she told me that, I didn't really know her all that well. We had just hung out for like the first couple times. So for her to be able to use part of her story to help us was really huge. So with that, we got a referral to infertility. In October of 2023, we did all of our initial testing. And then from November to February of 2024, we did some like really low tech fertility treatments. So we did 4 cycles of that, and all of those failed. And then starting in March 2024, which was right around Match, which was crazy.
Yeah.
We did our first IUI, which is intrauterine insemination. We did a couple rounds of that. We did 4 rounds of that from March of 2024 to like August, September, and those failed. And during that time, we had kind of talked to the doctors, and at each step, we're like, we don't recommend that people do these 10 times, really only like a couple of times. And if it's not working, then like you should move to something else. So Ben and I had talked with each other and decided how many times we would do each one. And we settled on 4 for each thing. And so nearing the end of that was really scary. I think God has honestly been preparing me for this my entire life, because when I was in high school, I would say that my biggest fear was not being able to have children. And so for that fear to be hitting me in the face was really, really scary. I also had said sometime during our journey of the lower tech treatments that I had said, I just don't want to have to do IVF. And I think again, like God was just preparing my heart for what was coming and what was our story. So after that, our last IUI, we started talking about doing IVF. We were really fortunate to have really awesome insurance coverage at Penn State. So that was God. I know that was God being able to like make a way and open the door for us. And then there was a lot of time in there from like September through most of January where we couldn't do anything because I was waiting for some levels to level out that were kind of weird, unexplained why it was happening, why those levels were high. I had an MRI that didn't find anything. It was just like a lot of things. It was really frustrating. It felt like I was just pushing this timeline down and down the road, and I would keep doing that thing where I was like, well, like we're not going to, if we can't start until this month, then we're not going to have a baby until this month, and then that's already this year, and that's way longer in the future than I wanted it to be. And like trying to plan out all of the things that you can't plan out, that I've learned that you just can't plan. So we got to finally start IVF at the end of January. And at the time of this conversation, we're getting ready to have our egg retrieval. And something that as the time was nearing that I had started to think about was that we had started trying for a baby in February of 2023, and now here we are in February, and the day of our egg retrieval is exactly 2 years to the day of when we first started trying to have a baby. And as the time was nearing, they told me your retrieval will either be this day or this day. And I was like, it's definitely going to be this one day because that's 2 years. And that's like definitely what God will do. Like, I just know. And I definitely, literally within the last couple of days, I doubted that. I was like, my body's not ready. Like, it's not going to be that day. And then we got the news about it. And I was like, why did I doubt God? I knew he was going to do this. This is just like him. I literally turned to my husband
Right.
in the appointment and I was like, this is so like God to do this timing.
So in character of him.
I was like, oh man.
As if it ever changes.
But that has just been like knowing that it's like exactly 2 years is just is so obvious to me that this is all God's timing.
Mm.
All of that time, all those months I
Mhm.
spent waiting for that level to figure itself out was because God was waiting for this exact day, for our retrieval to be
Mm.
this day, and to like speak to us in that way.
It's so comforting to know that the Lord is intentionally planning this and then trusting that that is for our good. That is the hardest part in my mind. But seeing glimpses of his love and his care for you along the way, and such a significant thing, such as a very specific timing, like you said, of exactly 2 years, is so powerful. Are there any parts of his character or any passages of scripture that have been specifically really encouraging to you or to you and to Ben during this very long season of trying for a baby?
Yeah, we have been learning. I mean, we knew this, but we've been really learning that God always provides what we need, whatever
Mm.
that is. So, whatever that means for timing of things, we've had a couple times in residency, like especially once he started residency, trying to get to appointments that he needed to be at is difficult.
Right.
But every single time he's had residents and attendings who are like, just take the whole day off. This is really important. Or who were Christians and would pray for him. And just those little things that we would be so anxious. Oh, he's not going to get this time off are like nothing. He talks to the resident, the attending, and they're like, yeah, sure, whatever. Like, it's fine. Take the day, which is more than we even asked for. It was like, he'll come back. We only need a couple hours. And they're like, no, don't come back. It's fine. And then in other things like finances and things like this and in life, God at every turn, every time we're like, oh, we're really worried about this thing. It's like, oh, I make a sale on Teachers by Teachers. Oh, I make a sale on Etsy. Oh, we get this random check in the mail. God is just always providing for us. And we just have
Mm.
to keep trusting that he's going to do it. That is a huge part of his character that I've been holding on to at this time. God is going to give us what we need. Even though this feels like the closest we've ever been to having a baby, I still know that this is all God's plan and it is his timing and he will do what he's going to do, whatever that is, even though that's scary.
Mm. That is so encouraging to me, Nicole, just listening to your faith explained, just like what you were saying of how you've seen the Lord provide so evidently in the past, but you're having to continue to trust that he will provide in each of these new opportunities in the future. And each way that things feel deficient, whether it be financial or time-wise with Ben, it's a new opportunity to trust. But you are a living example to us of how to do that well, because you are looking back at the ways the Lord has provided, and then you're choosing to trust that he will provide in this new challenge, whatever it is that seems daunting. So that is so encouraging to me to watch and listen to, because I struggle with that. I struggle with choosing in each new opportunity to trust that the Lord will be all that he says that he is, and trust in the consistency and the faithfulness of his character. So just know that we are praying for you guys as you continue in this journey. We're so grateful for your openness to share. I know it's not easy at all to share so vulnerably what it is that you're going through. So we're just so grateful that you're able to share with us and that you're willing to talk more about your story, because I know you're not the only one in terms of trying for a baby and going through treatments and doing it during residency, doing it during a season where there's a lot of constraints on your time and on finances as well. So we're just grateful for your willingness to share this part of your journey.
Yeah, of course.
And Nicole, one last question for you before we go that we ask all of our podcast guests here on the Surrendering Like Sarah podcast is, how are you currently learning to surrender like Sarah did?
Wow, in a lot of ways. So the two big things we talked about today have been the two big things in my life in the last 2 years that I've been really learning to surrender and give to God. So I'm really learning to surrender my plans and my dreams to God. Ideally, we would have had a baby already a year and 9 months ago. And that has just not been our story yet. So I've been learning to, with the help of my wonderful and godly husband, to place my faith in God and not the reproductive technology. That's been a big thing that we pray about, that God would help us trust him and not the reproductive technology that feels like it's dominating every aspect of our life. And then additionally, just with matching here, that was obviously hard. And it felt like all of our plans were falling apart because in my mind, we're supposed to move to California and have a baby and be closer to family so they could help us because residency was going to be hard and we've heard all the hard things and this is the plan and this is what has to happen. Well, that didn't happen. And I have just been learning to surrender what I want to God and trust that He has good plans for us because He has shown me time and time again over the last 4 years that I've been here in Pennsylvania that He is good. I didn't ever think I would be living in Hershey, Pennsylvania. I don't even know that I knew that was a real town. But here I am, and this is going to be the longest place we've lived outside of where we grew up.
Wow.
And that's, mind-blowing to me. Never would I have thought that. So just learning to surrender all the things that I want, my dreams and plans and hopes to God. And I know that when we put our hope in God, He does not put us to shame.
Nicole, your story is so encouraging. And I know that we relate so much on just our personal stories as well. So thank you so much for your willingness to share and for pointing us to God. And He has been so good and gracious to you in the midst of so much unknown in your hopes. And so we are just super, super grateful to have you on the podcast and now part of our team. So glad that you get to join us on this journey with us.
Hey, thank you.